What's up, guys? Pittsburgh Y Schwartz back again with another deck tech for you. And with World Season having just passed us, there is no better time than to talk about the deck that is not quintessential quintuplets that took up, what, half of top four? I'm joined today by Carmen.
What's up? What's up? Yeah, it had a really good showing. I believe in top 8 there were 3 quints, 3 STS, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Carmen and I were talking. We hadn't covered this deck on the channel yet, so no better time to talk about it than now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a breakout. 6 StockSoul 2 choice. You can see it up here on screen. It's pretty interesting. It is very good at not caring about what its opponent is doing. That's for sure. Especially how this one is. So, Brian, you want to take us away card by card and then run through it?
All right, sounds good. Starting with our level zeros, as usual, we've got 4 copies of the Elizabeth Brainstormer, more than the usual 3 that most decks play, solely due to the fact that in addition to being a self-tap salvage brainstorm, it also has a climax combo stapled to it that combos with StockSoul that you are playing, and that enables you to, at any point in the game, assuming you have your brainstorm in the back row, which you probably do, you get to slam this StockSoul, get an extra stock, and also replace the climax that you just slammed in your hand with a card that you would like to see. Ideally, usually, you can grab this level 0 Escanor for your finisher combo, the next card here, or a myriad of other good utility zeros we're playing in this deck. At the very least, if the combo whiffs, or yeah, if the combo hits
level 0 card, yeah.
Right. If it hits anything else, then you've got your pick, obviously. Second card we've got here, the Escanor. If you are familiar at all with Hololive, you've seen this this type of card before. On death, pay 1, clock a card from your waiting room to the bottom of your clock. Check 2, add all characters from among them to your hand. Card is pretty solid on its own as an early game way to replenish your hand. In addition to the fact that you are basically required to run 4 of it because it is a ditch requirement for your finisher, for the Escanor finisher. So not a bad card to be forced to run 4 of, though, for sure.
All right.
Continuing level zeros, 4 copies of the Gil Thunder Runner. On play, check top. If it is a character, add it underneath it as a marker. If the card has a marker, gets 2k power, so it is 3,500 the vast majority of the time, and it is a chaser. It runs to combat to a lane where your opponent also has a character, so it can save you a little bit of damage in the early game by preventing your opponent from getting direct attacks. You can force your opponent's weaker lanes to side this and save yourself a little bit of damage while also maintaining a plussing lane on board.
Top check also has a lot of utility in this deck. There are a lot of things you can do to finesse the optional sort of marker here, where you can leave that card. Specifically, it's a soul trigger or a climax on your finisher turns, or if it's not, move it to reroll if you are fishing for that, or like you see a 0 and you want to reroll for something better on your combo to maybe salvage something a little higher level to sculpt better. There are a lot of little ways to finesse both this and the Elaine Arisu right here, because that card can also leave cards on top, specifically climax.
Yeah, may is a very powerful word. Card says reveal the top card, you may put it underneath it as a marker if it's a character. So if you there's a card you want to leave on top for your combo, your finisher combo, or some other reason, this card lets you do that as well. Up next, 3 copies of Elaine. Card provides you some decent ditch out while also helping you move your top card if you don't like it in situations where you check it. On play, check top. If it's a character, add it to hand, ditch a card. Also has ditch a Britannia character and draw a card.
And depending on how you sequence this, you can either never draw the climax or always draw the climax if it's in those cards. So just make sure you sequence correctly based on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, lets you dig more into StockSouls that you want to be slamming all game long too. Yeah,
if you're
a powerful tool.
Gotta slam in this deck basically every turn. All right.
We play 2 copies of the King Climax Swap. On play, top 2 rearrange, and on play Climax Swap. I have seen decks also play the Meliodas Climax Swap from the second set, which is, I believe it is 3,500 if you have 5 or more cards in hand, and it's a yellow Climax Swap. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But I personally prefer this card. I think the top 2 rearrange, I think the top check, the information is much too powerful of a tool to pass up in a deck like the Escanor finisher, where you're trying to guarantee that your attacks hit specific triggers.
Yeah, even for your level 1 combo too. Just gives you some knowledge. Then we got this PR here.
Yeah, so 2 copies of this Elizabeth promo. The first time I saw people playing this, I wasn't really into it, but having played with it now myself, I think the global 500 power is actually pretty relevant considering your level 1 game plan. You're playing the Meliodas double rare from set 2 that spawns a copy of itself from deck. Sits at 6,500 full
Okay.
board, and on attack, check top 2, choose which one you want to trigger. This card lets that card sit at 7k cross turn, which is something not a lot of decks can reasonably clear without huge combo attacks. So a decent amount of the time you just get a free plus on board off of that. In addition to the fact this card has pay 2, rest self, heal 1, which in a deck where you're constantly slamming StockSoul every turn, if you're in a game where you're ahead, you can push your advantage even harder with some of your extra stock by healing back down to an unkillable damage threshold.
I like that in a deck that's not running a traditional 1k1 climax, this puts your main level 1 over the 1/1 unreversible Nino so that you can ignore it. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Gives you that nice power threshold. Yeah, it's pretty important depending on the matchup. Also pretty funny in the mirror. If your opponent isn't running this card, you're just over your opponent's characters, which is funny.
Yeah, people look at this, and myself included, when I first saw this and go, haha, global 500, meme card, bad promo. The card actually makes a difference with the level 1 Meliodas. It felt really good when I was playing around with it.
Yeah, totally fine card. Makes sense for the game plan of the deck to have this as opposed to an early play healer or something like that. Although there is one in this deck, but I don't know, you get a lot more utility out of this because you're very comfortable in this deck, kind of just slamming garbage every turn. Because all of your advantage comes from your sculpting and stuff comes from your Elizabeth Brainstorm. So something to keep in mind. And looks like 2 of the Rico here.
Yeah, last card, the Rico. On play, ditch a card, check top, check that card's level, salvage a level X or lower character, and on attack, pump 500 power. Yet another way to check the top card of your deck. So
doesn't move it.
And also give you a little bit of hand filter in case you're having a little bit of a rough game. But the Escanor finisher is important enough that you really need to know your top card going into that last match of the game.
Really helps you get the most out of that combo. All right, well, moving into the level 1 here.
Yeah, here's that Meliodas I was talking about, 4 copies of it. On play, ditch any card in your hand, spawn a copy of itself from deck. And if you have a second copy of it on board, it's 500 power per other Britannia character, and on attack, check top 2, choose which one you want to trigger. This card, as I mentioned, sits at 7k with the Elizabeth promo, and the choose trigger effect is actually really funny. I had a game the other night when I was playing around with this, where my opponent bled out a bunch of climaxes early, and I chose trigger twice into StockSoul and swung for 3 in 2 lanes, and they both stuck.
Yeah, it just gives you the ability to just kind of push because it gives you the ability to punish. It's pretty nice.
But yeah, the ability to trigger clean when you want to, push damage harder when you need to because you're not playing a level 1 combo. Card's pretty versatile, and like I said, sits at 7k, so oftentimes it's at least one of them live.
I was definitely a doubter in this card, but I like it a lot more in this than just kind of standing alone in a traditional list. Just because, I don't know, this card's a pretty high value attacker. It turns junk in your hand into an attacker all game. This plus whatever else, 2 of these and whatever else most turns is more than good enough to advance your strategy.
Yeah,
because it doesn't care about your front row.
It feels really clean to hit your first level 1 turn with a single copy of this in hand, and it turns into 2 7k lanes that trigger clean.
Yeah, it always makes sure your first trigger for turn is clean. You attack with it first, which is always nice. Hate trigger and first attack on a deck like this where you're slamming StockSoul. Backup kind of playing into that, right? You got the Leafa counter just to it adds another soul trigger to the deck, as well as maybe keeps one of these cards around, digs you closer to a cancel. All the usual Leafa counter stuff.
If you want to conserve stock, I have seen people on the regular free green king 2k counter, but I think having a soul count as high as possible in this deck is too important.
Yeah, definitely you want to do that.
Yeah, in addition to the fact that the Leafa counter effect, digging yourself closer to a cancel, is
really
pretty useful in some situations as well. Yeah.
All right, moving into level 2s.
4 copies of the Meliodas 2/1 combo. Early plays if you have a full field, which is pretty easy when with 1 copy of the Meliodas level 1 spawns you 2 attacking lanes. And the combo at the end of, or at the beginning of Encore Step, you can sack the StockSoul. If your field is full, salvage 2, and this card gains 1,000 power cross turn. So this card also lives oftentimes because with the Elizabeth promo in the back row, this thing sits at 8,500 cross turn after you've slammed the StockSoul, and also lets you sculpt exactly what you want from your waiting room going into whatever phase of the game you're headed into. So if you play this at level 1, you can grab a healer to prepare for 2 and a utility 0, or you can start stocking up on finishers and the ditch requirement level 0 Ricky Escanor. It's extremely versatile, and with this card, the game plan for this deck feels extremely extremely streamlined, extremely clean. It's very easy to sculpt.
Yeah, like when you're relying a lot on Elizabeth, opposed to like this, this can just always get you your 2 Escanor you expect to be able to go off with. Because usually your finisher turns like double Escanor, 1 bouncer, is the way the bouncer works with the finisher. We could talk about that later. So I believe you were on, what is it, 4 of this, and then 2 of the Elaine StockSoul?
Yes, the split is 4 of this StockSoul, 2 of the Elizabeth StockSoul, 2 of the Escanor finisher choice.
Okay. I've seen it played a bunch of different ways, just wondering. Because some people undervalue, like, they value the other combo more because that combo's live earlier, whereas this one's selective. So I don't think either way is wrong.
Yeah, this is definitely a deck I wouldn't consider solved yet. It's
yeah.
It might even be up to preference how you want to play your splits and counts in this deck.
Could even split the difference and go 3-3. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think a lot of it is personal preference, what you expect to see if this card is going to live in your meta more versus not. Like if there's a lot of 8 standby Quints around, maybe you undervalue this a little more just because the 2/2 Nino will clear it. So like paying 1 as opposed to slamming the other thing might be every turn. The Elizabeth back row 1 might be better. So it really depends on what you expect to see.
Yeah, and if you decide to change your ratios with this combo, there is a level 0 that I believe it has on turn act, send it to memory from stage.
I think you have to run a couple more cards to make it online. I can't remember specifically. It's a bloated package for sure.
Yeah, I think that the particular one I'm thinking of is sack go to memory, climax swap specifically into this choice, and while it's in memory, this card gets -1 cost, the Meliodas.
Oh, okay.
So that is something to consider. I have seen a couple people playing around with that as well.
Got 2 of the Card Titan too for all these mid-game decks. This is just an Adachi at level 2 that if you hit a climax in your top 3 cards, just kills one of your opponent's characters in front row. Removing 2 lanes with 1 card, pretty damn good, as well as adding more triggers to your deck. Really good card all around for a deck like this. That's kind of like ignoring the board a lot of the game. You deal with it when you can. Obviously, you want to remove Conatas if possible, things like that, things of that nature.
And I mean, hey, we've got ways to check our top card or 2 to see if there's a climax in there for this card fact as well.
Yeah, if you really got to dig for it, you really got to get something out of there. This gives you more than enough to do while you bridge a 1 to 3. So moving into our actual level 3s here.
Yeah, speaking of 3, 4 copies of the Escanor combo. On play heal, on attack, if you have the choice in play, pay 1, ditch the specific Escanor level 0 Ricky card, and if this card's soul is 4 or lower and your field is full, this card's attack, instead of dealing a chunk of damage, pings for instances of 1 instead. So if he is swinging for 4 souls, it is 4 attacks for 1 instead, which is an extremely powerful effect for closing out the game when your opponent is at level 3 and in a fairly compressed deck state, because you just blow through all the clean cards in their deck and ignore the climax and they just die.
Yeah,
this card is not as good at catching up when you're behind. If your opponent is like 2-3 and you need to kill them, even if you try field this, your opponent's probably not dead. But
yeah, you'd have to get really lucky on your triggers because the way this card works, it's 4 or lower on attack declaration. So
when you declare the attack, yes.
So if you direct, you can't direct immediately like up to 5 or something like that. You have to, which I don't think is possible. If you have a way to get like give out soul or something like that, just to keep that in mind. The base with the lane that you're swinging in must be 4 or lower. So if you're fronting a character, you have to be at 4, or if you're directing, you have to be at 3 plus the 1. Right. But you do get the trigger on top of that. That's why checking your triggers to trigger a StockSoul. If this is swinging for 6, that is like Cocochino.
That's
plus the swing. That's absolutely gross. And you can set that up. That's like not like completely unreasonable for this deck to hit. With all your top check, especially with the card we're gonna see in one slide down here, basically gives you the ability to hopefully at least get 1 Escanor does that, and a soul trigger on another. With the soul trigger count, you swing 6, swing 5, 11 pings. That's a lot. That is pushing, which is more than Shiki could ever do. When we were looking at this card in set review, the main thing is like it's really hard to look past Shiki. Shiki's like base 1 soul. She has a way to get another soul, and she tops out at 3 base attack, whereas Escanor tops out at 4. That 4 plus good StockSoul combos to pair it with means a lot for a deck like this, and that's why Escanor is so much more successful than a card like Shiki.
But yeah, like Carmen said, the dream is to hit 4 souls before triggering. Ideally, in 3 with the climax and an empty lane for 4, or 3 with the climax plus a soul pump from elsewhere in a lane with a character. Play 3 copies of the early play healer. It's an early play healer. Full field, 2k on turn, on play, ditch a card, heal the stock. It's Mesmerizing Water Goddess Aqua from Konosuba.
Yep, it's like the most uninteresting like role player, like early play healer you could play, but I think
it sure is a healer.
Yeah, its simplicity goes a long way, I think, in a deck like this. So it's a deceptively large amount of heals. Like you get to run 7 heals, not punish too much.
And the fact that it's a full field early play condition again just adds to the consistency of this deck.
Yeah, you're just slamming it if you need it. A lot of times, I think in this deck you don't opt to early play. You would rather hoard your resources for endgame to like dig and set up for a more explosive finish. But the option is there because you have the slots. The card that I want to talk about the most is actually how this Gil Thunder bouncer. Yeah, so this Gil Thunder is the reason why the king could be so, he could be so consistent, the Escanor, at popping off with a 6 soul swing. Because this is like the king from Slime. On play, you check up to 3, put them back in any order that you want, and then bounce one of your opponent's characters. So by playing this card, you create an open lane and you have perfect knowledge of your attacks. Or if you need to, if they're all like non-soul triggers, you know that you should probably try to get through those to set something up again. You're going to have an overabundance of stock and resources, hopefully, going into your finisher turn. So maybe even like recurring this or playing 2 of them isn't even that big of a deal if you're really high rolling. But again, you can also just ditch cards from your hand to give this card 2,000 power and a soul. So this card could also become like a snipe side attack or something like that because you're like going on pings and exact numbers, stuff like that. Unfortunately, he can't give out that soul to Escanor, but he can create a side himself. But you know, the open lane is and the trigger knowledge is more than enough.
The fact that you get to see all 3 of your triggers beforehand is a huge boon to the deck. In addition to opening up a lane where Escanor can swing for 4,
and then just 1 copy of the Diane stock swap here,
and
just so that
it's a stock swap. Yeah,
just so that our opponent can't sit on a massive amount of stock and be like, yeah, I can cancel 3 pings out of 6 or something like that and live. And just try to disrespect for you. This card existing means that they cannot do that, because even if you do like a quote unquote bad stock swap mid deck and you're pushing them over deck just to sort of give them like bad compression for maybe a big swing from this Gil Thunder in the last lane to close it out after you chew through their deck. Sometimes plays like that with a deck like this where you're very laser focused on the finish can be pretty good. So looking at the whole list over again, there is one card that I wanted to talk about. We don't have it on the slides here. It's the Elaine Brainstorm, the new Brainstorm, where it's app itself, sack a character, and then for every climax you hit in your top 4 that you mill, you check 3.
It's a check 3 Brainstorm. Yep.
Yeah, so it technically doesn't plus unless you hit 2. However, that is a way for you to recur climax combos every turn, because if you do not slam in this deck, you're really not doing a lot every turn. You really want to slam StockSoul every turn. So you can play with your ratios here. It's probably going to be in the Elaine Arisu, the Rico, the back row to like kind of fit in somewhere between like 2 to 3 copies of that card, maybe, if you wanted to make use of that strategy. The way that I've seen it used, and you can see players at Worlds, notably Christian Yarblocker from SBDCG was playing 3 of that card, as well as 4 of the Elaine Brainstorm. 7 Brainstorms seems pretty crazy, but the way that the card is used, and you can actually see it on footage, is you can like on play and you're in your finisher turns or in the mid game, after you like tap down an Elaine Brainstorm and it whiffs, or you just don't get what you want, you just like need to recur combo or something like that, or you're gonna go for a 2-1 combo instead of the level 0 combo. You can sack off a Brainstorm that's already gone off, or a card that's already been tapped down, and then hopefully hit and like dig into a climax or something like that. It's also a good bit of deck speed as well. So it's like a deck control engine as well as like a way to continue looping combo. It's actually a really, really cool line. I'm a big fan, actually. I would probably try to include at least 2, I think, just for that line. I think that's really sick. You can have this overabundance of stock. You like Brainstorm, maybe hit 1 or whatever, grab a sculpting piece, and then you go, okay, time to combo again, and like you sack off that Brainstorm, check 3, because like you're playing 4, like your ability to recur a Brainstorm or whatever is also pretty good. And then once the Elaine's already down, you can like do it again the next turn and like continually like sack off and change out your back row. That's a pretty sick line there. Any other thoughts on the deck, Brian?
I think we touched on just about everything. I've had fun with it in the couple games I've played with it so far, and it did well at Worlds. So I mean, it's definitely a deck to keep an eye on going into Springfest season here. I'm sure it'll be around.
Yeah, it is very good at ignoring everything in front of it, specifically Quince. I think a big reason this deck is doing so well is that when you have a deck like Quince that's so oppressive in terms of like how it controls the board every turn, where like they just beat down everything, they ramp up this giant thing. Having a deck like this that just doesn't give a singular shit about what it's in front of it, that has like this much finishing power, is definitely like can be a threat in a meta like that, where it's like everybody else is like playing catch up on board because board's so important right now, and this deck's like, nah, I don't care. Like maybe I'll kill some stuff. I don't even have to. You're gonna take damage and you're gonna die.
Yeah. The only time this deck cares is due to the fact that the Escanor finisher is full field condition, so you do need to watch out for memory kick counter, or you're only able to combo in a single lane if you do get memory kick.
You also really hate Sora, since you can really only bounce one lane. Even two Soras up. Even two Soras up really fucks with you. So you're gonna have to play into your card titans, sort of get them off the field, because it's hard for your Hololive opponent to recur Sora after she's down. That can really slow you up if you're not ready to fire that off, because you really want that card to clear all your opponent's Soras, get them out of there. But other than that, the deck does not care at all. Those two situations. All right, last slide. As per usual, card games competitive. We don't own or operate those Discords, but we are in them. Definitely give those a look if you look for webcam games, stuff like that. White Schwartz Global, White Schwartz NA, buy, sell, trade, all that good stuff on Facebook. Got all our Twitters done here as per usual. You want to try this deck, grab the Encore Decks link, head over to Weiss Fight. You can try it right in your browser. Upcoming content, we have more set reviews. Got to do. They will never let us free.
Yeah, we just got a bunch of announcements, so the list has increased yet again.
But yeah, we're working our way through those. Had to take gap week this week. Brian wanted to talk about this, so lined up pretty nice. But we'll be back at it. There's more that has to be done. Paru's Custom Corner, people are loving that. As Paru works on those, basically he sends them over to me, and then I edit them and throw them up. So whenever they're done, that's when they go. They're gonna go up midweek, or like early in the week or whatever. Usually somewhere between like Monday through like Thursday or whatever, if it's a big set or something like that. But people are really enjoying that content, and very happy with it. So we're gonna continue with that, and whenever he's done with them, they will be up. I think the next one is Hunter x Hunter he recorded with Jason. That'll be up soon, which is a bit of a smaller one. I know Assassin's Creed was massive videos, but people still enjoyed it. So definitely look out for those in the future. And with that, I think we're done. Pittsburgh White Schwartz signing off. We'll see you guys in the next one.